Hi Liz, how are you going today?
I'm good. How are you, Craig?
I'm doing good, thank you. Thank you very much for your time. I know you're a busy girl with all your, movies and TV, and so I really, really appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
No, thank you
My
so much for
first
having
question,
me.
yeah, no problem. My first question, as with all my guests, how are you doing in the pandemic? Are your family staying safe? And what things did you have to cancel during this period?
So for us, it was a very interesting thing because my husband and I moved like a week or two before the pandemic hit. Like we had heard inklings that what was happening, but it hadn't really gone full blown. We left LA before they went into lockdown, and we came into San Antonio when everybody was just kind of like happy go lucky kind of thing, right? Like it's not affecting us. Ooh, like whatever, we're cool.
Yes.
But we moved here because my sister, the middle sister, Alice, she had an allergic reaction to some medication back in December, and she ended up at the burn unit here in San Antonio.
Oh,
And it's because she ended up with Stephen Johnson syndrome, which
right.
then became TENS disease because Stephen Johnson's about 20 to 30% impact on the body. So you only lose about 20 to 30% of your skin, but she had 100% impact. So
Oh,
she lost all of her skin on the outside and then shed it like her lining on her lungs, her esophagus, her tongue, her corneas, everything. So it was kind of all hands on deck. Like my mom and my other sister and my niece and nephew, my stepdad, they moved from Laredo, and then my husband and I came from Los Angeles in order to come and help her through the process because she was in the ICU unit for a while. So we
right.
came during that. Like this, that was the reason why we moved,
Right.
right? So then we got here on March 4th into an apartment here that we rented, and then the pandemic like really started to hit here in this area. So up until the 15th, we were still going out and about. And I actually, because
Right.
I do YouTube videos, mainly like budgeting stuff. But one of them I had filmed and I didn't end up posting it because I went out the 15th when a lot of other places were closed down. I'm like such an asshole. I'm like walking around like random stores, like, and everybody else is like locked up. And like in San Antonio, it wasn't really like that until probably like the 24th is when
Right.
people really started like, I wouldn't say taking it seriously, but started taking precautions.
That's
And and then I'm a very sickly person. I will get everything and anything just contracted right away. Uh, and so my husband really wanted to make sure that I stayed inside as much as possible, but he was going out because he works for Affleck.
right.
He's a district coordinator for Affleck, so he has to be out and about meeting people. That's his job. And but I was staying mostly in. But during the pandemic, aside from being home and being a vitamin D deficient, I got everything under the sun except
Yeah.
for COVID. So,
Right.
like, I got the flu, I got
Ah,
bronchitis, I got a sinus infection, I got what was the other thing I had? It was an upper respiratory infection. So I was quarantined for a total of 30 days
right.
on it, like 15 days on and then 5 days out and then back in for another 15 days because even though I tested negative for COVID, I still had symptoms, and as a precaution they ask you to quarantine yourself, and because
Right.
I had a fever, so my last quarantine I had a fever on and off like every day. I would take Tylenol, I would go down, and then I would get it back. So I've been sick mostly.
Ah, but you
And
look you're so much healthier now. But like
oh, thank you.
you
Yeah,
look
no,
fine now. Yeah.
but yeah, so I mean that's basically it. I was quarantined a lot and trying to stay busy and not to let like depression get me down because I'm bipolar. I'm on medication, but even with medication, I tend to get a little bit depressed or manic, whatever phase you catch me in. So I have to keep myself busy in order to not get like bogged down, which I'm sure even people who aren't bipolar are experiencing that very same thing.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, so mental health has been like my thing about like just trying to stay on top of that and being very aware of where I'm at, like, in the meter of like, okay, you need to talk to someone. And luckily I'm,
Yes.
I have a therapist and stuff, but yeah. So
That's
that's
great.
my thing.
Yeah. And it's probably like a really, really important time, like you said, to be communicating with your family, with your friends, with with your therapist as well. So did you have any roles during this time that you had to sort of cancel?
No, no, no. The show that I was on, Vida, wrapped its third and final season, so I was coming out of a series. I did was sort of auditioning still a little bit. Like there was a role for Selena to play Yolanda Saldivar, which I think is either filming right now or is already done filming. My friend Naomi Gonzalez is on it. She plays Suzette Quintanilla. But when they first came to me with it, I was like, no, I don't want to play her. Because I'm from Texas, and I grew up listening to Selena. Even though I spent a lot of my life in California, like I knew who Selena was. Like that was probably the first singer who I was just like, oh my God. And I met her when I was 8 years old at a taco palenque in Laredo, Texas. And she was just so kind to me, and that just always stayed with me. And I'm always like, I will never, ever play that woman. Also, Lupe Ontiveros did an amazing job that like, you can't touch that. Like, it's just like not, just don't want to do that. So I was like, no, I don't want to audition for it. And they came to me like 3 times, and I turned it down because the person casting it, Carla Houle, casted me on Eastbound and Down and the 33.
Right.
So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go. That's some good. And we'll talk about that a lot later. I can't wait to talk about Eastbound and Down with you. But let's talk about Vida. That's your recent sort of role. So how did that all come about? And tell us about the casting process.
Yeah, so originally I auditioned for the pilot presentation, which is about a 15-minute, it's a condensed version of the pilot in order to get it picked up, right? So I auditioned for the pilot presentation for the role of Mari, who ended up being my best friend on the show. And then Chelsea got that, and then I just didn't hear about it, and then they came back they basically, Stars picked it up, but then I still went in and auditioned for the role of Mari again, which was weird because I thought it had already been cast.
Right.
But then I went in super hardcore. Actually, if you go look on my Instagram, there's a picture of me like in a yellow flannel, and I have all these tattoos because my really good friend and brother from another mother, Efrain Ramirez, who some of you might know from Napoleon Dynamite as Pedro.
Yes.
He he coached me on it, and he was like, no, we're going hard because she's from like, East, Boyle Heights. And I grew up in Boyle Heights. I know Boyle Heights. So we went hard for Mari, and Mari is not hard. If you watch the show, she is like, she's tough, but she's like a big, like, I don't know,
teddy bear.
Yeah, teddy bear. She's all mouth, kind of thing. And so we went in hard, but Tanya was in the room, and so was Carmen de Cuba, who's the casting director. And they called me in again, and they said, we want you to read for the role of Yoli. And I was like, okay. So I did it, and I did it with Efren. Carmen always has you self-tape before you come into her office. That's just her process. And so I filmed it in Efren's kitchen, and I got a call back to go in, and I did it. And I did it with a slight accent, just a little bit of an accent, because I knew that she was DACA. So I knew that she wasn't born in the US. So, but she grew up in Boyle Heights. So I just gave her like a slight little accent. And at the end of it, it felt good. But at the end of it, the casting director, I was telling her about the guisados, which is what she mentions, her tacos guisados. And then I'm like, do you know what they are? Like in my normal accent. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're like super small tacos, and they like overpriced you for them and blah, blah, blah. She's like, can I ask you something? And I was like, sure. She's like, can you do your audition again, but with that accent, like your normal voice? Because it's such a weird, like, what did she call it? It's like the juxtaposition of what you look like to how you speak. And I was like, okay. So I did it. And then I ended up landing the role. And then I come to find out that Tanya Saracho, who is the creator of the show, actually wrote that role for herself. Right. But she liked me so much in the room that I got cast as Yoli.
Right. That's so cool. And did you, have you ever had any sort of issues, like doing accents like in roles? Or is it sort of easy for you?
No, it's really hard for me. Actually, Eastbound and Down, when they wanted me to do a Mexican accent, because I was born in Texas, I'm like third generation, And on my mom's side, or wait, no, second generation on my mom's side, and like hundreds of years on my father's side, because my grandfather was Native American, full Native American.
Right.
So he was, he was from Arapaho, which is like Colorado, Oklahoma area. So for many, many years there. So I never really had an accent. So on Eastbound and Down, I remember that we're filming, and Jody Hill, one of the creators and writers and directors of the show, I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm supposed to do an accent. I'm like, I don't know. It sounds a little weird to me. And he's like, he heard it and he's like, I'm like, I think we need to get you a dialect coach. So they got me a dialect coach, finally a white woman to do a Mexican accent.
Yeah. That's a little strange.
So, but now I've kept that accent for any role that requires me to be like a Mexican woman. And luckily, like, in Greasy Strangler, I had no accent. I was just Janet. And then I did this movie called Lemon, which I loved. It was like such a passion project for everyone. And Janixa Bravo, who was our director, and she co-wrote it with her husband or her partner. And she's like, whatever you feel comfortable. If you feel like you want to give her an accent, great. If you don't, whatever you feel comfortable with, just do it. And I just felt that the character, because she was so Frida Kahlo-ish, that she just needed that little bit of an accent because it just gave her a little bit more of a drive. And I just remember that I was so happy that I did that, because I did a scene with, oh my gosh, why am I blanking on her name? Oh my gosh. I love her so much, and I'm blanking on her name. Matilda, Danny DeVito, Rhea Perlman. And I made her break in the scene. She laughed. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy. So yeah, it just varies, from thing to thing.
And you were talking about doing passion projects. Is that something, as an actor, you've been an actor for quite a while now? Is that something that you need to sort of do every once in a while, to do like a passion project?
So I think it keeps you honest, but also, I mean, whatever job comes my way, really. I mean, I think they'd be like, oh my God, I did it as a passion project. But that one really was because my agent didn't want me to do it. Because it wasn't paying that much. But I'm just like, but look at the freaking cast. Like, I don't give a shit if they're paying me $5 a day.
Yes.
Look at the cast and look at the script. That is a brilliant script. I know it's going to translate so well. Like, and it's true. I mean, like Janixa had such an eye, and she was so involved in like the color scheme and like what we wore and stuff like that, that I was just like, I don't like, it's Rhea Perlman, it's Neil Long, it's Brett Gelman. It's oh my gosh, what's his face from the Goldbergs? It's Megan Mullally. This is like some heavy freaking hitters.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
I'm like, I'm not going to say no to that
just
because it's not paying me what you want it to pay me.
Yes.
And I'm like, plus, I get to be on set, which is like the most important thing as an actor, because you do lose that muscle memory if you're not, working it. And I'm not into like the whole like my method or whatever, but I do believe that you have to be on set so that you don't lose that muscle memory, that there's something because I'm not a trained actor. Like, I just flew by the seat of my pants because I wanted to be on a series that I loved as a kid. That's the only reason. So everything that I've done has been just innately in me, that I just make a choice and it works, so.
And with a booking agency as well, I'm always interested to find out about that. Like, how did you find the booking agency? Did they find you? Did you find them? Have you ever thought of doing like something yourself, like booking your own sort of, or how does that all work?
So with my agent and my manager, the first go around, they came to me.
Right.
I had been doing extra work. I got my SAG card. I'd just gone through a breakup. Who I'm now married to the guy that I broke up. That broke up with me back then. Right. He broke up with me, and but so it was like I was just out of this relationship. I was crushed. I was like in my early 20s, and I was like, oh my God, life is over. And my best friend, one of my best friends, because it's worth the three amigos, Rocky, and then Yoli's my other friend. So Rocky had a manager and an agent, and his manager called him and said, hey, is Liz with you? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, let me talk to her. And so he gave me the phone and he's like, hey, he's like, there's this part. They've screened 100 girls. They haven't been able to find her. And I think you would be perfect for her.
Right.
And I was like, okay. And I'm like, but I don't have a headshot. I don't have a resume. And I've never auditioned before. And then he's like, they know that. They'll take a Polaroid. Just go. So I prepped really quick with Rocky. This was like noon. So we prepped really quick because it was at Warner Brothers and I had to be there by 3. Prepped quickly with him. I went in at 3. I read it, like they clapped and everything. And I was like, oh, like they do this at auditions. That's really nice of them. And then they're like, you come back for a callback at 5. And I was like, sure. So I didn't know what a callback really was, but I was like, so I just stayed and sat there for like 2 hours. And then I had to go back into the room and they had auditioned maybe like 2 girls before me. And I went back into the room and Paris Barkley was there, who's a TV veteran director. And then Miriam Steinem, I think is her name. She was one of the main people at CBS at the time. And then Vina Saad, who was the writer of this project, but then ended up writing like, oh my gosh, the Killing. She was the creator of that show. And then now she has this other show that she created. She's an amazing writer. But Vina Saad and then the 2 casting directors. So I didn't expect all those people to be in there. So I just did what I did. And then like they were like clapped again. And I was like, oh, yay. And then they're like, okay, great. Like it was so great seeing you. We're going to see you on Monday. And I was like, okay. Because I thought they were just calling me back in again. And then the casting director was like, no, we still have 3 girls outside. And then Paris was like, okay, well, would you mind waiting outside? And then, we'll talk to you. And I was like, cool. So then the girls went in and out. And then at the end, they're like, okay, so we'll talk to you in a little bit, but see you Monday. And then I get a call from the manager. He says, you got the show, top of the show. You get your own trailer. You get this. This is how much you're getting. And then he signed me. And then from there, my agent saw the episode, or actually, no, this woman who I know, Julia Vera, who's also a veteran TV actress and who was on the X-Files twice. She saw me. And then she called her agent, John Hugh, and said, you need to sign this girl. She's from my hometown. And she just got this part. She had no representation prior to it. So he signed me and I was with him for 9 years. And then I moved on to my other agent, Thomas Richards, who then I left a couple of years. And now I'm with Brian Wittenstein. And then my manager is Mara Santino. And again, she signed me because her best friend was with me on Eastbound and Down. She did my hair.
Right.
And she's like, you need to sign this girl right now. And she signed me. Yeah, no, I mean, like, I've just been very, very fortunate. So, like, whenever they have me speak at events about, like, my experience of getting into the industry, I'm like, it was really easy.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't happen. I was a kid who wanted to be on the X-Files. I did extra work and I got my SAG card. I went on my first audition and I got it. And then I just kept getting jobs. And after Eastbound and Down, I thought it was a fluke. And I was like, I should go take an acting class because what if I never work again? Yes. So I did. I took a few acting classes to make sure that I was good enough, because I was used to working on sets with people who went to universities for this, who trained at these academies, who just really worked on their craft. And here I was, a kid from the trailer park in Laredo, Texas, who just did it. I just wanted to do it and I did it. So I always have that thing of where I feel like I'm not good enough, even still, that I'm too green, that I don't know enough.
Yeah. Right. Maybe one day, it'll be like, okay, finally, I'm there.
Maybe we'll see.
So Liz, let's go back, way back. So it says, and we talked about this a little bit before, born in Laredo, Texas. But it also says that you've been raised in LA. So let's talk about this. So you're born in Texas. Was your mother and father, were they also in the entertainment industry? Were they also actors? No. No. So what?
They were. My dad really never really had a job.
As far as
I can tell. I mean, he did, but he didn't. I'm going to be very honest because I'm very, very honest about my life. My dad was a drug dealer. And my mom was on welfare benefits, and they were teen parents when they had me. They had me when they were 16 years old. So most of my life, I was used to my dad being at home and fighting with him at 5 o'clock in the morning to see who was going to get to watch their cartoons. because I always wanted to watch Rainbow Brite and Care Bears, and he always wanted to watch G.I. Joe and Transformers. So we would duke it out on TV. 5:30 in the morning, mind you.
Yeah.
So he's a very fun dad, but he was in and out of my life most of my life because he was in prison because of the drug dealing. And he died when he was very young of complications of cirrhosis because he was an alcoholic and a drug addict. So he died at the age of 39.
So for you as a little kid, how did that affect you, or did that sort of, you didn't think of that at that time?
Well, at that time, it really wasn't anything, like, it was just such a normal thing for me, like the drugs and stuff, like being around them and seeing him deal and stuff. It was a very, very normal thing. And yeah, I mean, it's not until I grew up much older, was in my teenage years that I knew that I was like, okay, this is a really like messed up situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they were part of the entertainment industry. I knew that when we lived in LA when I was younger, I almost did commercials because my aunt's live-in girlfriend at the time wanted to put me in commercials, and I got a part, but my parents were like, she's too young. No, she's not going to do that. So then that just never happened. And literally, I got bitten by the acting bug solely because I loved Mulder and Scully, and I was X-Files. Like, I remember, like, September 1983, like it was just yesterday. I was 12 years old, and I watched this show with like these two FBI agents who I was like, oh my God, they're so in love. Because I'm like, I am a shipper. And I was like, I want to be like Scully. And it was just like my dream and goal was to be on that show or meet David and Gillian. So I came out to LA in 2000 while they were filming. It was April of 2000, and they were filming The Fight Club, which featured Kathy Griffin in the episode. And I got to meet Gillian there. And I remember that people were screaming her name and stuff. And I said, Gillian. So she heard that, and she like came over, and her episode, All Things, the one that she wrote and directed, had just aired. And my poster said, I loved All Things, congrats. So she like signed it and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God. And then literally after that, I was 18, and I was like, screw it. I'm going back to Laredo. Because mind you, I went to California under the guise that I was going to go visit my grandma. And I ended up meeting up with someone who I met on the X-Files message board and stayed at her house in order to go be an extra on the X-Files. I took the Greyhound, not knowing this person, if she was even who she said she was. And I remember telling all these people, and they like came, like 5 people came off the bus with me because like they were convinced that I was going to get murdered and dismembered. And I'm like, oh my gosh, because, I was just like, I just want to be, So then I went home, and I was like, I'm going to move to LA and be an actress because I want to be on the X-Files. And literally, I packed up all my stuff, all of my VHS tapes, because I had 202. Well, actually, at that point, I didn't have 202. But all of my VHS tapes with all my X-Files episodes on them, which were my prized possession. Plus, I had just gotten the X-Files Fight the Future. It was like this box set from this place called, oh my gosh, what is it called? It was like a video place, Spencer's.
Right.
And then Spencer's, I think, is another thing. But anyway, it was a video place, and I had just gotten, it was like $90. And so my prized possessions and $700 to my name, and I moved to LA to pursue an acting career, which I had never had any inkling towards, never did anything at school remotely to do with acting. I was in choir. That was about it.
Now going from Texas to LA, that's a bit of a jump. So when you first moved there, how was it like? What was it like fitting into the LA sort of scene?
Not hard, because I mean I was raised there on and off,
right.
So many years. So not super hard. It was just more of like figuring out how to get around in this big ass city and making it to like these background casting calls. So that was more my thing. It was like, I remember being at the Grand Auditorium, which is now something completely different, off of Washington and Grand in downtown LA at 3:00 in the morning after a cast, like a background call. And I didn't have a ride home. And I was so scared. I was so scared, because how was I? And somebody like took pity on me who was there as a background actor, and luckily gave me a ride. But I remember getting lost in MacArthur Park and calling my grandmother at the time, and we were both crying on the phone because I didn't know where I was and she didn't know how to get me home.
Right.
You know, I remember waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning to be at the bus stop at 3 o'clock, to be in Manhattan Beach, to be background for Ally McBeal or Boston Public. And
Right.
and then coming back home at 10 o'clock at night and falling asleep on the subway and going back and forth like 3 times before I had to go back the next day and do it all over again. You know,
Wow.
so that was when I did my time, I think. And I learned a lot because since, like I said, I'm not a trained actor, I learned on set and I learned by watching others and mimicking others. So being a background actor really helped me knowing how to find my light and what
Yes.
a mark was and what camera left, camera right was. Those are things that you can't really be taught in acting class unless they're on camera acting class. Because otherwise, if you're going to like the Joanne Barons or like the Stella Adlers or, you know, all these places that so many people pay so much money for, it's more like theater environments than actual on camera acting. And if you're going to do theater, great, go for that. But on camera acting, you need to be an extra so you can get on set experience and watch
Yeah.
other people do what you want to do.
That's
I
a
mean, at
great
least
tip.
that's
That's
my
a Well,
perspective.
yeah. Yeah, like you
Yeah.
said, that's a great tip for inspiring actors that want to do that as well.
Yeah.
I have some actors here in Australia that are starting off here, and then they want to go to LA as well. But then they go to auditions, and there's thousands of people doing for these
Yeah.
little. And what's your advice? Do background. Just keep going, just keep trying. Don't let it sort of, do
I
you have
mean,
tips for the inspiring actors?
I think everyone's path is different, right? Because like I had a very easy path in that sense of like I didn't have to struggle as much as I've seen some other friends struggle with things like in getting into the industry or even trying to still get into the industry. But I think that for sure, onset experience is always, I will always say that 100%. So if you can do extra work, do extra work. Like it's a thankless job because you're basically moving furniture, but it just teaches you a lot watching what they're doing and you pick up the lingo and then you end up knowing what a best boy does, you end up knowing what a gaffer's job is, you
Yes.
end up knowing what, you know, camera C, camera, you know, A, camera B, you end up knowing what the difference is between a multi-cam show and a single cam show. And you know, you just learn all of these things by being an extra that I just absolutely will always say 100%. And get your SAG card if you can, because I know a lot of people like are SAG eligible and then they wait because they want to do like all this other stuff. And it's like, yes, you want to build a resume, but if you're not putting yourself out there as a SAG
That's right.
actor, like when are you going to do it? Like,
Exactly.
yes, you should wait to build experience, but at the same time, you should jump on it so that you can, you know, actually work in what you want to work in. And then, yeah, I always recommend acting classes, but not, okay, I won't recommend acting classes. I will recommend on camera classes and audition technique classes over actual acting classes because if you've already have some experience and you go into like Joanne Baron, Stella Adler, Meisner, you know, the Playhouse West, Playhouse Beverly Hills, any of those are going to strip you from your natural given talents to the very bare bones and then build you up in their technique. Now,
Right.
there's amazing actors that have those techniques, amazing actors, but it's not all about technique. Sometimes it's not all about the talent. Sometimes it's just really about the look. So why spend all that time and all that money on that technique if it really comes down to the look and sometimes how
Yes.
you look with the other person? It doesn't even have to do, you know, like I've been to so many castings where I'm like, I know I did a fucking badass job. And I watched the person that got the part and they were like, eh?
How? How did
But
that?
it was literally the look. It was private practice. I was like, why didn't I get it? And I watched her and I'm like, oh, she looks blue collar. I didn't look blue collar enough. But it
Right.
really comes down to the look sometimes. It's not so much the talent. Not always, but in some cases it is. So I always say audition technique or on camera class so you can watch yourself and perfect your technique. That's what I would recommend over any like of those, you know, frou-free places where you're going to spend a lot of money so that they can tell you how great they are.
Right. So, can you remember your first actual paid role, like on-screen paid
Yes,
role, and
the
how much
West.
did you get paid? The West Wing.
So yes, but I was in a featured extra, and
Right.
I think for 1 week of work, so it was right after 9/11, and they did this special episode. Aaron Sorkin actually pushed back the episode that they were originally going to film, and he rewrote this. He wrote this episode called Isaac and Ishmael, and it's a special episode for The West Wing. And I ended up being one of the kids that gets stuck in the White House. We were like on a high school tour, and I'm one of the kids that gets stuck there. And that's how I met my best friends, Rocky and Yoli.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and I made, I think, 7,000 for the week. It was my first extra job as a SAG extra, and it was a featured role. So I ended up making about 7,000 for that week. And the cast couldn't have been more amazing and loving. And Martin Sheen, like their leader, like he was fantastic. Like he came into the room and introduced himself to everyone, and there was like this pillar between him and I. And he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. That is so rude. Let me come around to you." And he comes around and he shakes my hand. He's like, "Hi, I'm Martin. What's your name?" And I'm like, "Hi, I'm Lizzie." Because at that time I went by Lizzie. And he's like, "Hi, Lizzie. It's very nice to meet you." He's like, "It's my birthday today. You should have some cake. Did you have some cake?" And I was like, "No, not yet." Every day, one cast member would get us like something, like a treat. So we had like Starbucks one day, ice cream the next day, because each cast member took turns like doing it. I don't have to say that Stalker Channing wasn't like the nicest, but everybody else is fantastic. Everybody was so nice.
So cool. And then away you went. And then now it says here that let me read here. You've been a part of Shirley of Cold Case, ER, and most recognized, or from where I have seen you a couple of years ago. One of my housemates said, "You have to watch this new series on HBO, Eastbound and Down." And it's like, okay, I'll give it a go. And watching that first series, it was just like, wow, this is totally different. And it's so funny. There's so many wrong things about it, but it's so funny.
But I imagine it's like across the board, like nobody's safe on that show. Like, any religious background, race, whatever. It's like everyone across the board. And I think that's one of the reasons why people love it, and also one of the reasons why some people don't love it, because it's just,
there it is. Take it or leave it.
Yeah, exactly. It's very much unapologetically what it is. I get it, runs the gamut. And then sometimes the people that are fans of it, I'm just like shocked. But I mean, I guess it's all my preconceived notions of who would like the show. So sometimes when I see someone and I'm like, oh, yeah, because sometimes it makes caricatures of people that might not like that they're being made into caricatures. Like even my character was a caricature of a Mexican woman. Yeah. So, some people might find it offensive, but so I'm generally always like shocked and thrilled of finding out who like loves the show. So it's just really cool.
So you play the role of Maria, and you come into the season 2, right? Yeah. As like the Kenny's in Mexico in baseball, and Stevie comes down and fires him, and then you're a part of the family that Kenny's staying with, right? So I would love to hear about like the whole casting process and how you got picked to do this, considering that like you said before, you're from Texas, you're not actually Mexican, but you didn't even film in Mexico, right? You actually
we filmed in Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico, right?
Yeah.
So how did that all come about? Was it your manager that found the role? Tell us about that.
So it was my agent, because I didn't have a manager at the time. It's because I had left Frederick, my first manager, by that point, and I was only with John Hugh, who was my agent, and unfortunately he passed a couple of years ago. So he sent me to the first casting thing, and I had never auditioned for comedy. Up until that point, I had mainly auditioned for like ER, Cold Case, just like very dramatic Southland, very dramatic, very procedural shows. And I had never done improv in my life. Right. So he sent me to this, and he's like, they want you to improv. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. And then, so I remember I was dragging my feet. He's like, just go. And I was like, no, I don't want to. I was sitting outside of the audition room, and Carla Houle was casting it. But at the time, Simone Lefer, her associate casting director, was there. And I was waiting in my car 30 minutes past the audition. And I was like, I don't want to go. And he's like, just go, just do it. Like, just try it. Just give it a try. And I was like, okay. So I went in, and Simone Lefeur is known for not letting anyone audition if they are late.
Right.
And I didn't know this at the time, but I went in, and by that time they were auditioning for the role of the bodyguard, which my friend Nelson Grande ended up getting the part for what's his face for oh my gosh, why am I blanking on his name right now? Michael Pena, for his character, the bodyguard.
Right.
So I go in and I tell her that I'm here for Maria and that I had another audition and that I just got here. And she's like, okay. She's like, I'll let you audition, but you're going to have to wait here until they're all done. So I sat there for an hour.
Wow.
And then she finally brings me in, and there's her and the reader. And she's like, okay, like, so this is a scenario. I was originally reading for the role of Katui's wife, which is Efren Ramirez's wife. And they wanted to make sure that I was okay with like showing my breast because I was supposed to be breastfeeding in one of the scenes. And I was like, that's fine. And so she gave me a scenario. I started reading with the reader and stuff. And then she's like, okay. She's like, we're done. She's like, can you work local Puerto Rico? I'm like, no. I'm like, no. I'm from here. Can't work local Puerto Rico. She's like, do you have a passport? I'm like, yes. And I was like, all that stuff. So I leave. And then about a few days later, I got a call back for that role. And they're like, okay, now you're reading for Network for Katui's wife. And you're going to chemistry read with Efren Ramirez, who is potentially going to be Katui. And I knew that he was in Napoleon Dynamite, but to this day, I have never seen Napoleon Dynamite. But I knew who he was because it was such a big thing, you know? Yes. So I remember showing up to Enemy Migs and what's the other production company? It's Danny's production company. But because Enemy Migs, I think, is David Gordon Green's company. But so I go in, and it's like these bungalows out in Hollywood, and I see Efren. Actually, no, before I go in, I get a call. He's like, hey, this is Efren Ramirez. I just wanted to talk to you because I wanted to, wish you luck tomorrow, and like we're going to do awesome. And so he wanted to like just get me warmed up for it and like sort of build a little like friendship before, which was really great. Like I don't even know how he got my number because I was like, what? Hello? So I show up, and he's there with his assistant, and he's like trying to get me less nervous because I had never done anything like that. And so we go in, and we do about 15 minutes of improv, and I didn't recognize anyone in the room except for the casting directors. I didn't know who Danny McBride was because I had never seen Pineapple Express. I had never seen what was the other movie, The Footloose Way or Minority Report. I hadn't seen any of that, so I had no idea who the fuck he was. Sorry.
It's okay.
And I'm like, I cuss a lot. I'm trying to contain it.
It's okay.
And so Jody Hill was there, Stephanie Lang was there, and a bunch of people who I had no idea who they were. The only name that I knew that was attached to the project was Will Ferrell.
Right.
And so we did the thing, and I was wearing this dress because I was going to fake breastfeed. And I remember that as we were going back and forth, I started feeling a little like chill, like there was a chill. And because I had worn a strapless bra. And then at the end of it, they were all laughing. And I was like, what? And my dress had fallen down below my bra.
Oh, no.
And so I was like, well, you wanted to know if I would go topless.
Yes.
And then they all started laughing. So that was that. It was supposed to be 3 episodes for that particular character. And I was like, cool, like, I think I did good. And I'm running out with Efren. And Simone runs behind me. And she's like, hey. She's like, is there any way that you can come back tomorrow and chemistry read with Steve? It's for a completely different role. We don't have any sides for her, but can you come and read for her? And Danny and Jody are going to talk to you beforehand because they want to make sure that we get her right. And I was like, okay. So I get home, and I think it was Danny who called me, and he's like, so tomorrow I want you to wake up, don't brush your teeth, don't brush your hair, put on the worst outfit you can think of, and come to this audition. And I was like, okay. So I got these warm-ups that had like Clorox stains on them, and like this shirt with an American flag that had mustard stain on it, like that had stayed in on it. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to make her girly, and I'm going to give her some gold ballet flats because that's the way that she expresses her girliness. Yes. And I had no idea who Steve Little was, by the way. So I walk in, Danny and Jody come and look at my outfit, and then they come and look at other options, and then they're like, no, this is good. So I'm like, okay, so I'm ready. And I saw Steve, and Steve did not talk to me at all because he didn't know who the fuck I was. And oh, there I go again. Sorry. So we go in, we sit next to each other, and they just give us scenarios, and we're sitting, and it's 20 minutes of just us going back and forth. And I'm supposed to not understand English, even though I do, and only speak Spanish to him. And at one point he like touched my nipple, and I almost broke, and I just like leaned into him and I started laughing, but like quietly. And I just remember him grabbing me, and he doesn't remember this, but I remember him grabbing me, putting his arm around the front of my face. And he's like, don't break, don't break, don't break, don't break. And then we got through it. And then at the end of it, I was like, cool, I'm out. And 3 weeks later, I got the part. I landed in Puerto Rico on May the 5th. We had a massive party, and I got super wasted because I was so nervous of being like around all these people, around all these real actors. And I got super wasted because they told me that night that they were bringing me back for season 3, even though I hadn't even shot the first 6 episodes.
Wow.
And then in season 4, I found out, if you listen to the behind the scenes things, that Maria didn't exist until I walked into the room. They wrote her for me. Yeah.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
So it was just a really cool like thing, like, just it's such a compliment, especially for someone who had no experience really, it was so green that they like.
Well, I have heard some of the commentary for the second season, and they said that you were an absolute standout, and they said that they had to do something, for you.
That's so great. Yeah, I haven't heard that. Yeah.
Yeah.
They told me for later in the behind the scenes things, and that was the first time that I had ever heard that, and I was like, oh, that is so cool. So yeah, I mean, but I was a handful for them because I went crazy. I was drinking and getting into fights, and like I was like out of control. Like, so the 4th season, I literally had them not put me at the same hotel as everyone because I was like a train without brakes. Right. And I mean, like, I was just getting in so much trouble, and they put up with me. Yeah, no, but I mean, there was nothing but love there. Like, I was just, you're living on the beach where you have access to anything and everything at your disposal. You have all this money, and you're like, youngish. Yeah. And you're gonna go batshit crazy. Yeah. You're not around anybody that you're just in this group with this group of people. It's like summer camp, you know. So a lot of us got into trouble. I got into trouble. But yeah, I'm just glad they never fired me.
Yeah. So what was it like? There was like obviously with a nude scene, there was a sex scene. So one of your first major roles, and all of a sudden you're getting, So what was that like? Yeah. Was it nerve-wracking?
Yeah. So, well, like, I was originally okay with showing the boob for the breastfeeding, but then when Maria, they told me that she was going to do full nudity, I turned it down. And I remember at the time I had this friend who worked for Connie Freiberg, who was Gillian Anderson's manager at the time, because I always had to have my connections to them. So I remember speaking to her, and I saying, like, I don't know that that's something that I want to do. And then she's like, well, it's HBO. And she's like, so it's expected. And then she's like, it's not like you're doing it for some random channel, because if anything, it's HBO, and it's going to get accolades of some form. Yes. And then she's like, so if you think about it as that way, then you're not going to feel so self-conscious, because, basically everyone on the show at some point is going to get naked, except for like Danny and Katie. So I was like, okay, fine. But I didn't know the day that I was having my sex scene, because it wasn't on the schedule. And we had been working for about, I think, 14 hours that day. And it was Puerto Rico, which was very humid.
Hot, yeah.
And extremely hot. And so I was gross, right? And then they're like, so we were having dinner, and Jody comes up to me, and he's like, hey, so we're going to do your sex scene tonight. And I was like, what? He's like, so what do you need to make you feel comfortable? And I literally deadpan looked at him like, tequila. lots and lots of
Yeah.
tequila. So Gia, Danny's wife, who was in props, got me a cold, chilled tequila and a warm tequila, and then like a glass with limes. And I was literally taking shots. And they're like, "Can I go back to my trailer so I can take a shower?" They're like, "No, we don't have time. We have to get it done now." And I was like, "Okay, can somebody get me wipes and lotion?"
Yeah.
So I went into this bathroom that was like dirty and dinky, and I just did like a quick wipe down and put on some lotion. And then they gave me like this nude underwear, like granny panties, for the lack of better word. And that was it. And I walked in, and Steve had a robe, and he had his courtesy sock, and I had my robe with my underwear. And they're like, "Okay, so we want to set up and get the lighting. So can you like disrobe?" And I just remember taking off my robe and just slamming my chest up against Steve. And I'm like, "Please, please, please, just stay close, just stay close, just stay close." And so we were he like laid down on top of me, and he's supposed to be like humping me. And Danny is our cue to stop because he walks in. And I remember that Steve was trying to make me feel comfortable. So he was like, "You smell pretty. Your skin's really soft." I'm like, "Not helping, not helping." So then Danny would just stand and laugh at the door because we were just so ridiculous.
Yes.
And so Steve ended up bruising my pelvic bone because it was like just rubbing, and I was like, "Oh my God." And then like at one point, like I remember he was, having a reaction, and then he was embarrassed. And I'm like, "No, it's like our bodies, it's like our bodies don't know that we're not doing this, right? So our
Yes.
bodies are going to react.
Yes.
Like we know, but our bodies don't." And so it was just like such a surreal thing. And then I remember at one point they're like, "Can you wear a thong because we can see the underwear too much?" And I'm like, "Okay." And they're like, "Or can you just go full nudity?" I was like, "Can we try the thong first?"
Yeah.
Because at that point I wasn't really aware of what I could say yes or no to. I didn't really know what my place was, and I was in Puerto Rico, and I was hoping that they wouldn't lead me astray. And I would say that 95% of the time they were like super conscious of the fact that I was very green and stuff. So they wouldn't push me on certain things. They'd ask though, but they would push me on certain things because they knew that I was like, I didn't want to say no, but I didn't know that I could say no.
Right.
Kind of like, no, like I wanted to say no, but I didn't know that I could say no.
Yes.
So I would be like, "Can we do this and see if it works?"
Let's go in this
So
direction.
it was a very surreal, but now I'm just used to getting naked. I'm just used to being like the go-to like Latina, chubby Latina, but it's like you're gonna get naked. So there's definitely, a jumping off point. What best jumping off point than Eastbound and Down?
That's right. Yes. And talking about that, like how much was improv, like with your lines in the movie? Was there some time? Because I know Danny McBride and Will Ferrell definitely in previous movies, but their outtakes are like hours and hours of just like just laughing and just like having a good time trying to get that perfect. So how much was improv and how much was actually your set lines?
So there was definitely scripts, right, that we followed the format, but we were definitely allowed to play. And for Maria, a lot of her language was mine because they didn't know how to write certain things. So I would have to go back and rewrite them. I always told them like, "Hey, do I get writer's credit for this?" Because I would, make up stuff in Spanish, or for the final like season 3 or season 4, I would just, put the things together. But there was definitely like an idea of what they wanted there. And then I would just like spruce it up with whatever I thought. And Danny and them were always really great about that. I still remember one of my favorite moments was when Stevie shoots his chin off. That whole scene, we went into a separate room because it was supposed to be a very heavy scene.
Yeah.
So it was Danny, Steve, and I, and we're at this motel in North Carolina, in Wilmington, North Carolina, and the entire hotel had been rented out for us for that night. And I remember we went into one of the separate rooms and we sat there, and Danny's like, "I just want to talk it through, see what you guys are comfortable with." And I was telling Danny, I'm like, "Well, I think Maria's coming off a little bit too harsh here. Like she doesn't care. And regardless of what's happened between Stevie and Maria and him cheating on her, she loves him and she
Yes.
supports him. She's like his ride or die chick. So I don't think she would ever do that. And he's like, okay. He's like, why don't we try one that way? The way that it's intended to. And he's like, and then we'll try the rest whatever way you want. So he told me, he's like, just go let Scripty know that you're going to be doing this. And I just went up to Scripty and I was like, hey, just so you know, I'm on this part, I'm going to do this. On this part, I'm going to do this. And so the freedom and the support and the trust that they had in us in order to just kind of do our own thing. And sometimes that's when the magic happened. And more times than not, that's when those were the takes that they kept. You know, because it was just naturally, and also, again, I'm an untrained actor, so I fumbled throughout, but that's what made for good comedy, I think, that I was so unaware in a way. At least in season 2, I was just so completely unaware that I was just kind of like a deer caught in headlights kind of thing, you know, so I came off very like, you know, kind of like doughy eyed and like, you know, innocent and whatnot. But yeah, no, I will always think of Eastbound and Down fondly, and I will always miss it every time I'm on another set, because I know that the magic that we had on that set is you can't replicate it.
And they kept saying, like, on that last series, that will there be another one? And Danny McBride's always like saying, never say never. You know, we'll just take a break for a while. But, you know, who knows? We could all come back together and, you know, start a whole story again. But would be...
even talk about like a spinoff with Stevie and Maria, but Steve kind of didn't want to be stuck in that role of like Stevie forever, you know? So I know that there was talks about that, but I think he put a kibosh on it pretty quickly. But I understand him. Like, he was very much associated with that character. And every time people would always tell me, like, is he really that slow? And I'm like, no, he's an actor.
It's a character, yes.
Yeah.
He played that so good. Obviously Danny McBride gets all the raps. Kenny Powers, he's the man. But even talking to my friends and, you know, people,
he's the MVP, man. He's the MVP.
If they didn't have Stevie Little as his sidekick, I don't think it would have been as popular as it was. Is that a fair call?
Him out. I think it balanced Kenny, because Kenny was so outrageous, and even though Stevie was ridiculous, he was still the straight man in a way. It was It was a really like weird juxtaposition to see that, but he was that, and I feel like he was the heart of the show in a way.
That's right. Yes,
like, he was the conscience of the show, and I think it just really helped soften Kenny up as well. Like,
that's right.
Because April sort of did that, but not really, because the even though it's a love story between April and Kenny, really it's the friendship of Kenny and Stevie that blossoms, and you see that arc, and also how Stevie and even eventually Maria impact Kenny and the way into who he becomes.
That's right.
So, I think it would have been different if you hadn't. And Steve was originally supposed to be one small role. Like, he wasn't supposed to be the part of the show.
Yeah, because he was just like the
pilot,
school teacher.
So brilliant that they had to keep him. And I think that's one credit that I have to give the guys, is that when they see something in someone that brings something, that there's something that they see there, that they stick with that person, and they try to figure out a way to like bring them in. So I think that's really cool. Like, that's such a credit to them as like creators and writers, and having that keen eye of seeing like this could become something really cool.
Absolutely. Like, you had a good sort of bond with him. On you know, and you could just tell that it worked really, really well. So but it's interesting. But it was interesting that you said that you'd never met him before that. So Jill, like you did for those 3 or 4 seasons,
we got wasted a lot together. we probably made out a few times too.
Well, did he have to shave his head? He shaved his head in one series.
He shaved his eyebrows.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Because he broke up. But so did he get paid extra for that, or was it just like
No, I think he was pissed off about it because they didn't offer him extra. Like, I didn't get hazard pay for the boobs.
Oh yeah.
And I actually ended up having a really bad reaction to the boobs. And I remember David Gordon Green. We should definitely have a part two. But I
Yeah.
remember David Gordon Green being like, "Why don't you just get real ones? I'll pay for them." And I
Yeah,
was like,
right.
"What? No." And I'm like,
Maybe,
"I'll never work
maybe,
again."
maybe for the next one we could sort of break the seasons down,
Yeah,
like
totally.
go
I'm
go
down.
go for it more in depth, like
Yeah.
season 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, and then I remember he's like, "Well, I just worked with Nicolas Cage and he's down for anything." I'm like, "Okay, difference. Nicolas Cage makes millions, and I don't. Second, I don't think you're asking him to enlarge his dick.
That's
Uh,
right. Yes.
uh, let's not, compare." Um, but actually, my Danny let me take a pair of my tits, and they were just like falling apart. Like I had them on this cast thing. And for Marilyn's 50th birthday, because he's such a huge fan, I was like, "Well, what do you give the guy that has everything?" I signed my tits and I gave them to him for his birthday. So they're at Marilyn Manson's house.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Wow. So you have a friendship with
Yeah. Yeah. He's
yeah,
one of my
right.
buddies. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And see, that's something I could talk about because I play music. I play in a band.
Yeah.
Um, so I didn't really know about that you were friends with
Yeah.
Marilyn
He's a
Manson.
buddy
So
of mine. Yeah.
we
It's
could
such
talk
a weird thing.
music
People
and
don't associate us together, but we
no,
became friends because he's such a fan of the show. And then
right.
he did a cameo, and we've been buddies since like season 2.
Wow.
He's buddies with me and Steve. Me, Steve, and Craig Robinson. We always go to his concerts. Like he just invites us or his birthday parties and stuff. Yeah.
He's great. Like I've seen
He's
him a
such
couple
a
of
cool
times here in
dude.
Australia. Yeah,
Yeah.
and he'd be like, obviously never met him, but he's the type of guy that'd be like just down to earth, and he
He's so
talks
down
it,
to earth.
and
He's
he
so
talk
down to
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
A lot of the stuff he does is for shock value. Like I remember when
Yes,
I first met him,
agree.
like he would do stuff to see if he could like get me to freak out a little bit. And then I was just like, no. And then I think he liked the fact that I was like so unimpressed. And yeah, so
Yeah,
now it's
impressed is
just like,
still more.
now he's just like him. Like he's like just normal
Yeah,
Manson. I call him Manson. So,
Manson.
but yeah, no, he's cool. My husband loves him. Like
Yeah,
he's a cool guy. He expected someone different, and he's like, oh, he's actually a cool guy. And like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
right.
So yeah,
Wow.
he sent me this poem, the
Yeah.
left-handed poem. This is my first poem written by my left hand, so it might be illegible and hard to understand. But I'm trying to think different and rewire my brain, and maybe, just maybe, not to be so insane. And I'm going to drive my car with my eyes closed, but shh, don't tell anybody. I hope that no one knows. I'll drive to the beach and I'll drive to the grocery store, but I won't buy frozen pizzas because I don't eat processed foods no more. See, I'm turning my life upside down, and this poem is proof. And now I'm looking up all the ground up. I'm looking up at the ground and down at the roof, and I know that sounds crazy and hard to understand, but that's what happens when I write with my left hand. And he sent me
What an
another.
interesting.
He just sends me um, for Marilyn Manson's. I think it was his 52nd birthday. He read him a poem at his birthday party.
Wow, that's so cool.
And Manson was so tickled. He was so tickled. And he loved it. He loved it.
Wow.